Good morning. You are in for a treat today. We're going to go ahead and make Joanne Chang's famous banana bread out of her flour cookbook. She has the bakery and restaurant in the Boston area. My husband and I actually visited there several years ago with his uncle and had the most delicious lunch we've ever had and became huge fans. Follow her on Instagram. I bake a ton out of her cookbooks. So her banana bread out of flour is a great go-to. It's a very simple banana bread, but it is absolutely excellent. And I'm not a huge fan of banana bread. It has to be really good. And this is an excellent banana bread. And it's very fitting to make this today because we're going to talk about my girlfriend, Melanie. And Melanie and I have known each other since the early 90s. It was the trifecta of friendships because she was one of the first friends I met in my working environment, in my first job. And we were in the same profession. We both enjoyed reading and books and authors, and we both loved food and cooking and baking and going to different food events. And so it's a perfect time to talk about Joanne Chang's flour banana bread recipe because, again, too, this is one of the few banana bread recipes that Melanie loves as well. And she has a connection to the flour restaurants in the Boston area because her daughter was in dance camp in Syracuse in this really hot summer. It was probably 3 weeks at this dance camp, and then she had to go on college tours. And you know how it is, after 3 weeks of dance camp, you're tired, you're hot, and now you're going to go on college tours. And they ended up in Boston at one of the flour restaurants, and it just was a great respite, and it was almost like, I'm going to be okay now. It was very centering and lovely. And so before I start and put on my apron, I think you should notice that I have a Zingerman's Bacon Camp shirt on, or actually Camp Bacon. And again, once I had said that Melanie and I love to do different food events together, and we like to go to the bacon camp. Now, we don't go every year, but different lecturers and international food writers and chefs and people who are just involved in the food culture. And it's a full day of lectures. It's all sort of centered around bacon, but it's bigger than that. It's about food culture and where does our food come from and what it means to different people. So one year they had the Kitchen Sisters there, and they do a lot of podcasts on food and culture. They're independent. Both of the folks, the Kitchen Sisters, are independent film producers, and they've done a lot of producing for stories on NPR. Last year they had John T. Edge, who is one of my favorites. He wrote the Potlicker Papers, and it's about Southern food culture. It's a food history of the modern South. And he was there last year. He's the director of the Southern Foodways Alliance out of the University of Mississippi. And again, talking about food culture and where do specific foods, what is the importance of different food culture? So that was very exciting as well. First off, about the banana bread recipe is that I actually put my bananas skin on a baking cooking sheet in the oven for about 15 minutes at 325 because I want to get the essence of the banana out. So it does not say to do that, but that's what I do. I went to a cooking show at the public library a few years ago, and they were talking about if you want to enhance sort of any banana flavored things to go ahead and bake them in the oven. So that's what my bananas are doing right now. I am doubling this recipe, by the way. So it calls for 3.5 very ripe medium bananas peeled and mashed. So I put 7, since I'm doubling the recipe, I went ahead and put 7 bananas, peels on, into the oven, and so that when we're ready to put that into the mixture at the end, it's going to have this lovely banana aroma and smell, and it's just fantastic. So that is one thing that I do, and I wanted to let you know about that. The other thing is I've gone ahead and buttered or greased 2 bread containers to put the bread in when we're ready. I've gone ahead and greased those 2 containers. Again, I'm doubling the recipe. So when I tell you this information, it's doubled. So I just want to make sure you realize that I'm doubling this recipe. So you know about the bananas, you know about we've got the greased bread containers, but I also wanted to tell you that I've gone ahead and toasted my nuts. Now this particular recipe calls for walnuts, And I substitute pecans for this banana bread recipe, so I want you to know that as well. If you're a purist and you prefer to have the walnuts, that's fine too. It is a nut of your choice. It does call for 3/4 cups or so, you double that and you'd get it says toasted and chopped. So I've already gone ahead and toasted my pecans, and so I wanted to let you know that too, just for ease of adding it to the recipe later. So we're gonna go ahead and in a bowl, we're gonna just sift together the flour, baking soda, cinnamon, and salt, and we're gonna set that aside. So since we're gonna double, the flour is 1.5 cups. So of course I'm gonna make it 3 cups. 1 teaspoon baking soda, which for us it'll be 2 teaspoons. 1/4 teaspoon ground cinnamon, or 1/2 teaspoon. And then 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, so we'll make that a full teaspoon. So we're gonna go ahead and sift the dry ingredients together. Now, I should tell you that I don't necessarily sift per se, like as you would in a sifter. We're gonna bring out our old friend, the dough whisk. And I just use this as kind of a whisking motion to sift my dry ingredients. So just so you know, the old friend dough whisk is coming back out. It plays a prominent part in all of the recipes in my mind. So we're gonna go ahead and add 3 cups flour. And as I said again, this is just an absolutely lovely banana bread recipe. And Melanie and I have done a lot of baking and fun projects over the years, and a lot of visits to very fun and cool foodie events, food cultural events, lectures, cookbook authors. It's just been a great experience for the two of us over the years. And it's probably, it's almost 30 years now for us going on these different adventures. Now we're gonna go ahead and put in 2 teaspoons of baking soda. So still working on our dry ingredients. So 2 teaspoons baking soda. 1/4 teaspoon or 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. So there's my half. Oh, does that smell delicious? Man, I don't know. Cinnamon just, besides flour and all those ingredients, cinnamon does it to me too. Cinnamon, nutmeg, the whole thing. All right, and then we're gonna put in 1/2 teaspoon or 1 full teaspoon of kosher salt. So we'll get that 1/2 teaspoon or full teaspoon of kosher salt. And this constitutes our dry ingredients for the moment. So we're gonna go ahead and just give them, instead of the sifting, we're just gonna go ahead and make sure they're worked around. So we've done that, and we're gonna go ahead and set this aside, which that's pretty easy so far. And this is just a day recipe. There's no yeast in it. It's just a quick grapefruit bread, and so we're gonna go ahead and we can do this in a single day. So that's the nice part about this. So then we're gonna use our standing mixer, the KitchenAid mixer, and we're gonna go ahead and whip 4 eggs together along with sugar. So we're gonna go ahead, and it calls for 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of sugar. So for us, it'll be 2 cups and 4 tablespoons of sugar. And we're gonna do the eggs and the sugar together in the standing mixer. And we're gonna whip that on medium speed for about 5 minutes. You really want that to be light and fluffy. Now, if you're using a handheld mixer, you'll probably need to do it for 8 minutes, but we're gonna go ahead and do that for 5 minutes. One of the food adventures, or actually it's a continuation of a food adventure story that we have been involved with, is something called Outstanding in the Field. The chef and artist Jim Denovan sort of started this as a traveling farm-to-table experience, celebrating food culture and the farmer and putting them together. And he first started this in 1999. And Melanie and I we were supposed to go to our first one that came to Michigan and I've saved all of the menus from these events. The first one was in August of 2011, and Melanie and I were supposed to go, and she wasn't able to go, so Chris, my husband, went with me for that one. And then we still hadn't experienced this together, so the next year in 2012, we did go to one in the South Haven area. The first one was in Chelsea, near Chelsea, Michigan. And the second one was in South Haven. So Melanie and I were able to go. And it pulls together, you go and sit at a farm destination, and Jim and his staff, they pick a location. So you're either by a farm pond or in a field or by an orchard, and it connects some farm or chef with the farm ingredients locally. And it is just a fantastic time to meet all these other people who are interested in this type of thing as well. And so he was really one of the first ones. I know it's more prevalent now, but he was really in the late 90s the first one who started this movement. And so he travels around throughout the United States and overseas for these farm-to-table dinners. And he travels around with this amazing red and chrome and white fantastic bus. And we kept thinking, Melanie and I keep wanting to have, to see the bus. We see it online. We know that the bus is part of it, the Outstanding in the Field bus. It's almost like an icon. And for some reason, every time we wanted to see it, 3 times actually, the first 3 times we went to Outstanding in the Field events, the bus had either broken down or something had happened. So by the time we went to our 3rd Outstanding in the Field event in August of 2018, there was still no bus. And we're like, Jim, hey, really would like to see the bus. This is sort of part of the event. And he's like, well, you guys should come to, they usually have a super secret Big Sur event in November that's not usually at the beginning of the year in their schedule. You kind of find out about it throughout the year. And he said, let us know. We think it's going to be on this date and we should have the bus. So we're like, okay, this would be our 4th and final time. And Melanie and I are planners. We are not that spontaneous. We are planners. That's part of what we do for our job, and we just like the planning parts of things. So we decided, you know what? When we find out about this, whenever it is, we're going to go. And as it so happened, it fell on the same time that we were already going to be in Chicago to see Ina Garten, and we left from Chicago for the super secret Big Sur event. So in November of 2018, we were sitting overlooking Big Sur in this ranch high up in the mountains overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It was the most fantastic sunset I have ever seen. It took 45 minutes on buses to get through these sort of ranch roads to get up to this mountaintop. And it was the most surreal, incredible, beautiful, overwhelming, inspirational food event we have ever been to. And you meet people really from all over. I mean, it isn't just people. I mean, we flew in from Michigan to Chicago to California. And it was just this ongoing story that we've had around food and food culture and chefs and farmers and local. And you just, as I say, meet the most amazing people, all around you, talk to people around you and so forth, and why are you here, and how many have you been to, and all this sort of thing. And it's just a great time to talk about local, fresh food and what it means to us. And it's always about a place and the story. So Melanie and I couldn't believe it. It's November. We stayed in Monterey. We're sitting outside eating breakfast in November, early November, and we just couldn't believe our good fortune. I know people who live in California, this is not unusual, but we couldn't believe we were sitting outside in early November having breakfast. It was fantastic. And we went to the Big Sur Bakery and just had these great experiences, even though we weren't out there long and the whole premise was to get out and go to this Outstanding in the Field event. But we had all these other successive great events around that. As I say, we went to the Big Sur Bakery. We enjoyed doing the whole Route 1 around Pebble Beach and that whole experience, and just had all of the surrounding events around the Outstanding in the Field were just solid. We went and walked on this beach on the ocean that was so surreal, and there weren't a lot of people. Again, this is early November, so for us it's very unique to have it be nice and nice weather in early November, and just had a really what I would call one of those magical experiences in your lives with a friend that you have been building up to this whole time. You've been having these food culture and food conversations, and it sort of ends up culminating in this great Outstanding in the Field event on the top of this hill mountain on this ranch, cattle ranch, You get to talk to the farmers or the ranchers and find out their story. You're overlooking the Pacific Ocean, having this amazing food by a variety of chefs. It's all local products. It just really doesn't get much better than that. And we finally got to see the bus. So the KitchenAid mixer is going ahead and whipping up our eggs and sugar for the 5 minutes on medium speed. Then we're going to go ahead and add, and we're going to put the mixer on low speed. We're going to take our full cup of canola oil. Remember, we're doubling. Normally it'd be half cup, but we're doing a full cup. We're going to slowly drizzle in the oil. You do not want to pour the oil in all at once. You want to do it slowly so that it incorporates into the eggs and doesn't deflate the air you have just beaten into the batter. Doing this should take about a minute. So just do it slowly, just think nice and slow, have patience. And then we're going to go ahead and add our bananas that I've told you I put in the oven for about 20 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes on 325. You can go ahead and either add creme fraiche or sour cream to the recipe. It calls for 2 tablespoons or 4 tablespoons because we're doubling. Right now, a lot of times I do use creme fraiche, but I think for purposes of today, I have sour cream, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. So I'll use 4 tablespoons of sour cream. And then I'm going to go ahead and add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. It calls for 1, but we're doubling, so it's 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to mix that on low speed. Well, I've gone ahead and put the sour cream, the bananas, and the vanilla in the mixer. And now it talks about using a rubber spatula, folding in the flour mixture and the nuts until thoroughly combined. You don't want any flour streaks visible, and the nuts should be evenly distributed. And remember, I'm going to be doing 2 bread pans instead of 1 because I've doubled the recipe. And I actually do this, I add the flour mixture into my KitchenAid in the mixer. I do it on very low speed and just do it kind of gently, a little bit at a time. So again, I'm going to go ahead and add my flour mixture and my nuts, and then we'll come back and we'll go ahead and put them in the 2 bread pans. So now we're ready. We've gone ahead and added the flour mixture as the wet mixture was being whisked around, and it just absolutely smells fantastic. Now I have to tell you though, if you're using the bananas in the oven, be prepared that they are hot. I kind of slice them, and you have to, maybe give them a little bit of time to cool because they are hot. So you get the essence, that wonderful, wonderful essence of banana, but they are hot when you open up the banana and take the insides out and put in as it's in the containers, it's whipping. So just to let you know that they are hot. So cautionary tale. But we're going to go ahead and put our beautiful, beautiful batter. Almost lost most of the batter there. We're going to go ahead and put our beautiful batter in our 2 loaves. Remember, we're doubling the batch. And we're going to go ahead and put this in the oven. The oven is at 325, and they're 9 by 5 inch loaves. And we're going to go ahead and put them in for about an hour to an hour and a quarter. They should be golden brown on top, and the center springs back when you press it. And sometimes, I test it maybe after an hour, and maybe I do a little poke inside, with a bamboo stick or something like that to see if it's done. But it usually goes for about an hour, hour and a quarter. And then put it on a wire rack for 30 minutes, and then you pop it out of the pan to finish cooling. So we're going to go ahead and put the beautiful batter into our 2 loaf pans, bread pans. And we sort of get them semi-even, obviously. So we'll do one and then the other. And this is, although you're probably not supposed to, and this may be a secret that is maybe too much TMI, but I do leave a little bit of batter in my KitchenAid pan or bowl to kind of lick out. So I am one of those people that likes to lick out batter, or especially when you're making like brownies or chocolate cake or frosting. You want to be the one to lick the beater or the spatula. That's me. And maybe it's just because I grew up doing that, and I have that great memory of when your mother hands you or your grandmother hands you the spatula or the batter or the beaters. So we're gonna go ahead and get these 2 loaves in the oven, again, hour to an hour and a quarter. So just make sure you check them, and then we'll cool them for 30 minutes on a wire rack. So I wanna tell you what I'm reading lately, and it's probably two complete dichotomies of what I'm reading, and maybe that's the great balance, right? We've talked about this. It's that somewhere the great magical middle is sometimes where you need to be at. So I'm reading Erik Larson's newest book, The Splendor in the Vial, about Churchill's first days when he became the prime minister and what that was like in the initial stages of World War II. And then I'm balancing that out with a book called The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. And it's about a young woman who, her major was art history in college. She works at a bookstore. She's fairly bookish. She does trivia nights and leads a fairly introverted, quiet life. And I think we can kind of relate to that. It's a nice bookend from The Splendid in the Vial. But I think that was easily relatable to me because I actually had a middle school teacher write in my middle school yearbook, "Man does not live by bread alone, he needs peanut butter." And I think that was kind of a nod toward, I was pretty quiet and shy in middle school and then through really high school. And so until I found my girl tribe, we've talked about that. And, he was kind of right. And so it's very relatable right now, and it's a fun read. And I'm just enjoying it thoroughly with her adventures. So 2 good books right now on the different ends of the spectrum, The Splendid in the Vial by Erik Larson and The Bookish Life of Nina Hill. We've been talking about baking is a lot of part of memory, and it's a part of adventures and food adventures and journeys and stories. And that's a big part of my friendship with Melanie too, is we've had so many food adventures, but we've also had great family and friends adventures. And since I've known Melanie for really almost 30 years, or over 30 years, I guess, she was really involved and became a really good friend of my parents as well. She became sort of like how we talked about, second parents, second children. My parents they were also the second parents. So just to be clear about that. So I have a lot of other second parents, and my mother and father were also second parents to a lot of people. So it kind of was a nice reciprocity there, but for sure with Melanie. And my mom and Melanie and I did a ton of just great adventures together. And one that sticks out in my mind was in actually December of 1996. And we were going to go to Chicago for the day, and it was I think it was after we had done I think I talked about in one of the videos about the 30th birthday party, and it was right after that. It was my 30th birthday year leading up to that, and after the anniversary or the birthday party, we had we had given out as favors Christmas ornaments. And we had some ornaments left over, and on our trip to Chicago, we're like, okay, well, let's wrap them up, the leftover ones, and give them to the attendants at the Skyway, the toll booth. So let's give them, because those were the days when you actually had real life people at the toll booth. So I kind of missed that, but I really liked that. Anyway, so we're like, well, let's do that. You always hear about the things, pay it forward. And these were in the 90s, and so things were fairly, pretty low-key at that time. So we're like, well, how cool is that if we pay it forward and give out these ornaments to different toll booth operators? So how cool is that on our way to Chicago? Well, interestingly enough, very few of them wanted to take them. I don't know if we looked, I don't know if I was driving or my mom was driving or Melanie was driving. I don't remember that detail. But no one really wanted to take the ornaments from us. And we all had them nicely wrapped, and we were thinking it was such an innocent, cool thing. And I think they were thinking, oh my gosh, is it something dangerous? And so we finally did give away all of our lovely ornaments, but it took a bit. We did not give them out to all of the toll booth operators. So there was a bit of, I think, skepticism or worry on what we were wanting to hand out. So anyway, that was part of it on the way. And we'd also, for some reason, and this is another detail I don't know, you know how you remember things in snatches and you're not sure of all the details? Poor Melanie, and it happened to be a particularly warm and balmy day in December going to Chicago, which was fairly unusual. And I don't know why, but we really encouraged Melanie, of all people, I don't know why. We didn't necessarily have these. It was a long blue wool coat, and it was pretty balmy that day. It was really warm, and it ended up being this wool coat just sort of attracted all of the humidity, and it became this really just sort of weight carrying it around or wearing it around Chicago. And we'd also said, let's not get anything big and have to haul around and take back to the car and so forth. Well, I ended up being the person who bought, remember when Tom Hanks, I think the movie Big was out somewhere it was in the 90s, and you could get for kids those big, like something that kids could like either, I think you went on the floor and kids could play in it. And it was big. And we got one of those for my niece and nephew for Christmas that year, and indeed had to haul it around all over Chicago until we took it back to the car. But the best part of all of this was on our way back. Again, I'm not sure why we didn't take gifts that we were exchanging for each other around Chicago or wherever we might have had lunch. And so we didn't or weren't able to open up our gifts. It was, remember, as Melanie and my mother and I, we weren't able to open up gifts until we were driving back to Michigan. And at one of the exits at the Skyway, or actually one on the Skyway, one of the exits is not an exit per se, but there's an Oasis that has a McDonald's in the middle. And so we're like, okay, I guess this is where we're gonna exchange Christmas gifts. That's fine. And we tended to exchange a lot of books between each other. My mother's a librarian, remember, and Melanie, as I said, was in the trifecta. We were huge. We read a lot together. We did a lot of author events and exchanged books quite often for Christmas. And that year, Melanie had found this book, and she bought 2 copies to give to my mother and I, but we didn't know it at the time, obviously. And she found this at a bookstore in Indianapolis, and it was at the Borders. There was a big Borders in Indianapolis when they were still in business, and it's called Bachelor Brothers Bed and Breakfast by Bill Richardson. He's a Canadian author, and he was actually on the CBC, and it is this, and it even says, from Melanie Culp, Christmas, 1996, and it was printed, or let's see what was the year. The publication date was, first U.S. edition was in 1996. And it is and has been my go-to book since she gave it to us, and she gave one to my mother as well in 1996. I have given it out as gifts to people, and it's kind of like the Ferris Bueller's thing that I explained during Marcy's thing. You don't always know why a book you're called to it or calls to you and becomes a part of your soul. You can't always explain it, but let me just read a little bit of an excerpt from it. A pair of endearingly eccentric bachelors in their 50s and fraternal twins own and operate a bed and breakfast establishment where people like them, the gentle and bookish and ever so slightly confused, can feel at home. Hector and Virgil think of their B&B as a refuge, a retreat, a haven where folks may bring their own books or peruse the brothers' own substantial library. Now, maybe that does not entice you, but boy, it sure reeled me in and reeled my mom in. When I am sick or low or just need to pick me up, this is my go-to book. Kind of like Ferris Bueller's my go-to movie, because it's based on memory and a time that always makes me feel positive and happy. I think reading this brings back that memory of that great adventure of the day with Melanie and my mom and I, and we were all pretty close. I mean, it's just the exchange of a book that someone is going to enjoy or hope that they'll enjoy. And I don't know if Melanie ever thought that this would be my go-to book for, this was 1996, so it has been quite some time. So it was just a great day, and this culminated in the magic of that day. So this is a great go-to book. I don't know why, but it just is so appealing to me. Again, I read it whenever I'm sick or low. I've given it out as gifts to a lot of people, and it just, for me, captures a lot of our great friendship over the years and the familial friendship of Melanie and her husband and family with my mom and dad. So whenever I want to think about those great memories and really have a great comfort read, this is the book I go to. So I've taken the 2 loaves of bread out of the oven. I did put them in at 325 for the full amount, the hour and a quarter. And they are absolutely, you press in it bounces back. I put my bamboo stick in to test if the bread was done all the way through, and it is. The house, everything smells just absolutely fantastic. You could start smelling the wonderful banana bread smell. Gosh, probably half an hour, 45 minutes into the bake, actually. And it's kind of fun thinking about Melanie and our time together. And I was just thinking about baking and good food, and Melanie and my mom, and I had said that we like to do things together. And I was just thinking about the fact that my mother and I hosted a baby shower for Melanie, and we decided it would be fun to do an educational baby shower, so everyone had to bring like something educational. I think someone brought Goodnight Moon in Spanish, and we had really cool different books that people brought, and different blocks, building blocks. And the funny thing is, I invited people, and my mother invited people that Melanie didn't know. They were friends of ours, or girlfriends of mine. And we also made them bring food. So not only did we invite people to Melanie's baby shower that she didn't know, but we made them make food. But again, those are all those connections. And then everybody sort of is combined into the mix of friends and story and adventures together. And some of those folks that Melanie had never met before became friends as well. So there was one girlfriend that I'd worked with, and ended up being that she and Melanie and I went on food adventures together. So it was just always adding and mixing in different people from our lives. And I was just thinking about that funny baby shower about, oh yeah, we invited people that Melanie didn't know, and then made them bring food. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and let this bread cool for 30 minutes on the wire rack, and then we're gonna tip them out of the bread loaf pans and let them finish cooling. So our 2 loaves of lovely banana bread have been cooling on the wire racks in their pans. So now we can go ahead and get them out of the pans for further cooling. So I'm just gonna go ahead, even though, they were greased pans, I'm gonna go ahead and do a little loosening around the edges just to make sure they come out okay. And the best thing about doubling a recipe is it's kind of like you bake one, you give one. So there will be a point in time during the day that I will leave one of these on the doorstep of my friend Melanie, of the said memories from today. So we're going to go ahead and flip these out. They're a little warm, so I'm going to flip one out, and I will turn it over. I'm going to flip the second one out. Oh my gosh, that's just absolutely fantastic. And we are going to go ahead and try these later on as soon as they're cooled down a little bit more, but they are still pretty warm. They've just been cooling for a half hour, so we have to let them go for a little bit longer for a final cool down. But I wanted to tell you just one kind of funny, odd story. This happened a long time ago, probably in the mid-90s at some point in time. I don't know if it is exactly it was in the mid-90s, so I was still in my 20s at this time. And it was the year my mom and dad drove to Alaska from Michigan, and they went through the southern border of Canada to go through to Alaska and so forth, because they love to do road trips, love to travel, that type of thing. And Melanie and I think I told you I grew up on a farm, and we were going to go and spend the night at my mom and dad's house, and we were going to be there to welcome them when they came back from Alaska. And so that was all, simple enough, all well and good. And so one of the days when we were at the house, we decided we were going to go to Frankenmuth for a little day trip. And Frankenmuth in Michigan is this town that has this great Christmas store called Bronner's, and it's all has a Bavarian sort of theme. All the buildings have sort of that look, the Bavarian look and so forth, architecturally, and it is great. Zenders and the Bavarian Inn that had these great chicken dinners and the whole 9 yards. So we were going to go for the day. And again, the details are still a little bit foggy of the why of some things. And so we decided to take my mom and dad's truck, which was all fine. They were fine with that. And so in those years, when I was still in my 20s, I looked fairly young, and I don't know why I wore this, what I would call, I mean, I'd never wear it again, just let's be clear on this. But I wore a straw hat that day that had like a black ribbon. It was a straw hat, black ribbon, kind of black ribbon hanging down. I had like white capri pants on. I don't remember what Melanie was wearing, but I don't know why. I had this, it wasn't attractive, but it was kind of like a Pollyanna look that was, as I say, just not attractive. But anyway, so I decided to wear this hat. I don't know why, white capri. So we went to Frankenmuth. And on the way back, we had a great time. You know, it was all good. A great adventure. And we wanted to take some of the back roads coming back to my mom and dad's house. And again, we were going to be there to greet them when they got back from their trip. And on the way home, we were driving on this one road. And they were all, I mean, they were not the main roads, but they were all blacktop. So we're traveling, Frankenmuth was sort of south or north of where we were. We're traveling south. And we're going down this country road, having a great time, great summer evening, what have you. And we're coming back, and there is like a shovel or a front scoop of some kind in the middle of the road. And I hit it. Okay, yeah, I know. I was in my, okay, you know, just you're going with the story here. And I hit that shovel or scoop or whatever it was in the road with my father's truck. So we promptly proceeded to have a flat tire. And there weren't a ton of other houses around. There were mainly farmhouses, kind of like the farmhouse that we were going back to, or my mom and dad's house. And I decided, you know, I need to go and get help. And I didn't know how to change a truck tire. I didn't feel comfortable changing a truck's tire. So I went looking for help. Melanie stayed there with the truck. And she sees me. She kind of has this moment of memory of having me walk away, kind of looking like a Pollyanna with the hat on. Again, the straw hat, the black ribbon around it, what have you. And all of a sudden, I'm running back and I'm yelling, "Get in the truck! Get in the truck!" And she sees, you know, I'm running, white capris, Pollyanna thing going on, coming back because the dog has come around the house as I'm going to one of the farmhouses to help with the truck. Or change the tire or whatever. I don't know exactly what was going to happen, but anyway, I was going to get to a house. So she sees me, you know, she has this memory of me walking away, and then this memory of me running back, shouting out, "Get in the truck, get in the trunk," and there's this dog coming around. And then this lovely, dishy young farmer comes around from the other side of the house, controls the dog, comes over, and helps us change the tire. He was absolutely lovely. I don't remember his name. I think my mom and dad actually, when we got home, they arrived home soon after that, and that was a common family name. But he was dishy and lovely. He helped change the tire so we could get home. He did ask my girlfriend Melanie to maybe not sit where she was sitting because we were sort of at an incline, and he was worried about, you know, something if the truck wasn't secure. And so he asked her if she could get further out to the side of the road or over on the side of the road. And it was just one of those things. She said, "Yeah, I saw you kind of walking away, and then this sight of you running back with that hat on and the dog and get in the truck, and then this lovely dishy farmer comes out from around the outbuilding or around the house and helps us change our tire." It ended up being a very lovely memory, although odd and surreal. And I just don't remember some of the whys for everything, but certainly remember those visuals. She does too, remembers those quick visual clips of just these moments of just like, what's going on here? Now what's going on here? And then an ending with the young gentleman changing our tire, and we got home safe and sound. We're going to go ahead and try this lovely, lovely banana bread by Joanne Chang from her first flour cookbook. And I'm going to tell you how fantastic it is. Hear that? Top of the loaf. Oh, each slice is just better than the last. You cut into it and it just smells absolutely fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and take one of these slices, cut it in half. It's cooled down enough now so we can have a little bit of a wee snack. Boy, I'll tell you, this banana bread is out of this world. Flavorful, tasty, beautiful texture, absolutely lovely. And have it for breakfast, have it as a snack, do the make one, give away one. Whatever you do with this banana bread, you will not go wrong.